Good morning, everybody. Good morning, dear supervisors, teachers, students, colleagues, all people who are attending us. Happy April and happy rainy day. I am Ms. Hibahash Khalil, a teacher of the English language at Ahmad Iskandar School in Damascus. Today is Thursday, 13th April, 2023. We are going also to continue with the grade 12, unit 10, culture shock. But today we are going to talk about only grammar. So, grammar, we'll start with modals, okay? Modals. We're going to talk about obligations or lack of obligation, okay? Now we are going to talk about modals, obligation, and lack of obligation. The first one is must. Must. Why do we use must? Obligation comes from the speaker. So when the obligation, what does obligation mean at first? Obligation means when you are forced to do something, okay? Obligation means that you are forced to do something. If you are forced to do something by yourself, you should use must. We use it for written rules and instructions and giving opinions and saying what is necessary. So, to write rules, to give instructions or opinions, we should use must. Example. Passengers must fasten their seat belts. So, the obligation is imposed by the airline who wrote the notes, okay? But passengers, to keep themselves safe, they should fasten their seat belts. I haven't spoken to Sandra for ages. I must call her. So nobody forced me to talk to Sandra, okay? But I feel that I must call Sandra because I have not spoken to her for ages. So this is obligation from yourself. The second one is have to or has to. Has to with he, she, it. Have to with I, he, we, you, they. Why we use have to or has to express obligation that coming from outside. So have to or has to is the opposite of must. Must talks about obligation from the person's or the speaker's self, but have to or has to expresses obligation from outside. Example. We have to get up early tomorrow to catch the plane. Okay, the plane is not going to wait for us. So we have to wake up early to catch it. Here, the time of the plane is the reason of the obligation, or the reason for the obligation. So when you are talking about obligation from yourself, we should use must, but when you talk about obligation from outside, from someone else, we should use have to or has to. Another model, should. Why do we use should? Should expresses advice and or recommendation. Advice or recommendation. Example, you should apologize to the boss for being late. This is advice. Advice. So I am advising you to, or I advise you to apologize, to say sorry to the boss because you are late. So this is an advice. Also, you should get a good map of London before you go there. This is recommendation, okay? I recommend you to bring with you a map of London before you go there. So, should is used for advice or recommendation. Another model, mustn't. Mustn't. What is mustn't? What is the use of mustn't? Mustn't is not the same as don't have to. Please pay attention. A lot of students can mistake, or have mistakes between mustn't and don't have to. Mustn't expresses prohibition. Prohibition means when you are not allowed to do something, okay? Mustn't means you're not allowed to do something. Example, you mustn't wait here. Means you are not allowed to wait here. It's negative obligation, okay? You are not allowed to wait here. You are prohibited to sit here. Also, we have don't or doesn't have to. Don't or doesn't have to. It expresses absence of necessity, okay? You are not, it's not necessary to do this or to say this. There is no need to do this. So you can do this, but you don't have to. So it's not necessary to do this. Example, you don't have to wait here. So it's not necessary to wait here, but you can wait here if you want to. So when you want to do something, okay, but you are not necessary, you are not forced, okay, it's not necessary, or you are not forced to do this thing, but you can do it, we should use do, don't, or doesn't have to. Here we have no obligation. Okay, please pay attention. I will repeat what I just said. We have must. Must means obligation from yourself, okay? There's nobody is forcing you to do this thing, but you do it by yourself, okay? This is obligation from yourself. We use must. This is the first one. The second one, have to or has to. Has to with he, she, it. Have to with I, you, we, they. Have to or has to when you express obligation from outside, okay? That there is somebody or something is forcing you to do this thing. The third model is should. Should expresses advice or recommendation, okay? The fourth one, mustn't. Mustn't means prohibition. Prohibition or when you are not allowed to do something. The fifth one, don't or doesn't have to, when you here expresses absence of necessity. There is no necessity to do this thing, but you can do it, okay? Now, shouldn't to advise not to do something, usually because it's bad or wrong. When I advise you to not to do this thing, because this is a bad thing, not to say this thing because this is a bad thing, so we should use should, not, shouldn't or should not. Example, you should not smoke. I advise you, okay, I am not forcing you. You are not prohibited from smoking, but I advise you not to smoke. Another example, you should not say those bad words, honey. So this is bad thing, okay? I advise you not to say these bad words. So these are the modals in the present form. Now, if you want to put these modals in the past form, what should you do? To express obligation in the past, use had to. Obligation in the past means the past of must and the past of have to or has to, okay? Please concentrate with me. The past of must and the past of have to or has to, we should put had to. So this is an obligation in the past. Example, I had to report the incident to the police. Did you have to get a visa? So I had to report, okay? This is in the past. I had to report this incident to the police. Or another example, did you have to get a visa? So this is an obligation in the past. Second one, to criticize actions in the past, use should plus perfect infinitives, means use should plus have and verb 3, okay? When you talk about actions or criticism, when you criticize actions in the past, you use should plus have and verb 3 means should plus perfect infinitive. Should in the past means that the subject didn't do the right thing, okay? When you use should in the perfect infinitive means that this person you are talking about did not do the right thing. Example, I should have stayed at home. I wish I had stayed at home, but I didn't stay at home. So I didn't stay at home and my behavior was wrong. I did something wrong that I did not stay at home. I wish I had stayed at home, but actually I didn't stay at home. 3. Must plus perfect infinitive is not used to talk about past obligation. So must alone, okay, must in the present form is talking about present obligation, but must plus perfect infinitive means when you use must plus have and verb 3 is not used to talk about past obligation. It's used to make deductions about the past. Okay, here we have deductions about the past. Example, she must have left early. Okay, I deducted that she must have left early. So I called her, or I arrived and did not see her. I deduct, or I reached to a deduction that she must have left early. Look at this sentence with me. We have the modal must, we have the auxiliary verb, which is have, only have. We can't say she must has, okay? It's wrong to say she must has. It's always she must have, so it's verb 0 after modal and verb 3. Now an exercise. Complete the sentences with should, shouldn't, must, mustn't, have to, don't have to, or doesn't have to. Number 1. Use etc. or gap to express personal obligation. What should we use to express personal obligation? It's must. Number 2. Use to express general obligation. Okay, when you have general obligation, law, rule at school or work or anything else, obligation from outside, we should use have to. 3. Use should to give an opinion or a recommendation or advice. We can use should. Number 4. Shouldn't expresses negative advice. So the negative of should is shouldn't. Should means advice in present, but in affirmative, but should not expresses negative advice when you advise someone not to do something. Number 5, don't or doesn't have to is used to express absence of obligation. Okay, absence of obligation. So or absence of necessity. When you are not, when it's not necessary, you are not forced to do this thing, but you can do it. Okay, you can use don't or doesn't have to. Mustn't means you are not allowed to do this. It's against the rules. You are not allowed. Here we have prohibition. We use mustn't. We have exercise. Complete the sentences with the correct modal verb. Number 1. In Britain, you have to drive on the left. It's a rule, okay? It's a rule. You are not free to drive on the left or on the right, okay? You are forced to drive on the left. So this is a general obligation or obligation from outside. You should use have to. Number 2, he has a backache. He should not carry heavy things. Okay, so it's an advice not to do something. We use should not. 3, I am very hungry. I must eat something. Okay, I am hungry. I must eat something. There is nobody forcing me to eat something. No, it's an obligation from myself. So I use must. 4, you mustn't use your mobile phone in a gas station. You mustn't use. You are prohibited. You are not allowed to use your phone in a gas station. So we use mustn't. Number 5, Tom doesn't study enough. He should study harder. Okay, it's an advice to Tom. I advise Tom to study harder. it's should. We use should. Number 6. If he has a credit card, he doesn't have to pay for something in cash. He can use the card. So he is not forced, okay? He is not forced, or it's not necessary to pay in cash. He can use the card, so he doesn't have to pay. Look with me, we used here doesn't because we have the subject he. With he, she, it, I use does not have to. This is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for being with us. I hope you got all benefits. Thank you.